Marcus Henderson sat in the sterile waiting room of Summit Technologies, his worn dress shoes tapping anxiously against the polished marble floor. The shirt he wore had been ironed 3 times that morning, the creases sharp enough to cut through the thick air of desperation that clung to him. His 6-year-old daughter Emma's face flashed in his mind, her bright smile from that morning when he'd promised her that today would change everything. She'd drawn him a good luck card with crayons, a stick figure daddy holding hands with a stick figure girl under a rainbow. That card was folded carefully in his jacket pocket, right next to the overdue rent notice he couldn't bear to look at anymore. 2 years of single parenthood, after his wife Sarah had passed from cancer, had reduced Marcus from a confident marketing professional to a man who'd been rejected from 17 jobs in 4 months. Each rejection carved a deeper wound into his already shattered confidence. But he kept trying because Emma deserved a father who fought for her future. If you believe in second chances and the power of human kindness, please hit that like button, drop a comment below sharing your thoughts, and subscribe to our channel. Your support means everything, and you never know whose story might inspire you next. The interview had been a disaster from the first handshake. Marcus's mind had gone blank when Jennifer Walsh, the stern-faced HR director, asked him to explain the 2-year gap in his employment. He'd stammered through an explanation about being a caregiver, about losing his wife, about trying to be both mother and father to a little girl who still cried for her mama at night. Jennifer's expression had remained unchanged, carved from stone and corporate policy. When Marcus stumbled over a basic question about digital marketing trends, he could see the interview dying in real time. His hands had trembled as he tried to reference campaigns he'd worked on years ago, but the words came out jumbled and desperate. The other interviewer, a younger man named David Chen, had looked at him with something that might have been pity, which somehow felt worse than contempt. After 20 excruciating minutes, Jennifer had stood up and extended her hand with a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes, thanking him for his time in that tone that really meant, "Don't call us, we won't call you." Marcus had walked out of that conference room feeling like he was drowning. The fluorescent lights of the hallway seemed too bright, mocking him with their harsh clarity. He passed the ambitious young professionals typing away at their desks, people who probably went home to nice apartments and full refrigerators and lives that made sense. His throat tightened as he pressed the elevator button, willing himself not to break down in this pristine building, where everyone seemed to have their lives together. The elevator seemed to take forever. By the time the doors opened, Marcus felt the crushing weight of failure pressing down on his chest like a physical thing. How would he tell Emma that Daddy hadn't gotten the job? How would he explain that they might have to leave their small apartment, maybe move in with his elderly mother who could barely take care of herself? The shame burned through him as he stepped into the elevator, and he didn't notice someone calling his name until the doors began to close. David Chen was running down the hallway, his tie flying behind him, one hand raised as he shouted for Marcus to wait. The elevator doors reopened, and Marcus stood there confused as the younger man caught his breath, his face flushed with exertion. David pressed the button to hold the elevator and looked at Marcus with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. Without a word, David pulled out his phone and showed Marcus a photo. It was a little girl, maybe 3 years old, with David's eyes and a brilliant smile. David's voice cracked as he explained that he'd lost his husband to a drunk driver 2 years ago, that he understood exactly what Marcus was going through. The impossible balancing act of grief and parenthood, and trying to survive in a world that didn't seem to have patience for people who were broken. David told Marcus that Jennifer had already moved on to the next candidate, but he hadn't been able to let Marcus leave like that. He'd seen something in Marcus's eyes that he recognized, that specific kind of exhaustion that comes from loving someone so much that you'd burn yourself down to keep them warm. David made a phone call right there in the elevator to someone he called Robert and explained that he had a candidate who needed to speak with him immediately. Marcus tried to protest, to say that he'd already failed, but David wouldn't hear it. He led Marcus to a different floor, to a smaller office where Robert Michaels, the company's founder, sat behind a modest desk covered in family photos. Robert was a man in his 60s with kind eyes and silver hair, and he listened as David explained the situation. Then Robert did something unexpected. He asked Marcus not about marketing strategies or employment gaps, but about Emma. He asked what she liked to do, what made her laugh, what Marcus dreamed for her future. If this story is touching your heart, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, and leave a comment telling us what second chances mean to you. Before we continue to the ending, type hope in the comments if you believe everyone deserves another chance. The conversation that followed wasn't really an interview at all. Robert shared that he'd built his company after losing everything in his 30s, that he'd been homeless with 2 kids and a wife who believed in him when no one else did. He'd built Summit Technologies on the principle that talented people sometimes faced circumstances beyond their control, and that the measure of someone's worth wasn't found in a perfect resume, but in their character and determination. Robert offered Marcus a position right there, not in marketing, but in a training program that would allow him to rebuild his skills while earning a living wage. The salary was modest but stable, and it came with healthcare benefits that made Marcus's eyes water with relief. Robert explained that the company had a daycare program for employees' children, that Emma would be taken care of right downstairs while Marcus worked. Marcus couldn't speak. He tried to find words, but they wouldn't come. 2 years of carrying impossible weight alone had taught him not to hope too hard, not to believe in miracles, but here was this stranger offering him not just a job, but a lifeline. When he finally found his voice, all he could say was thank you, over and over, until Robert stood up and pulled him into an embrace that felt like permission to finally exhale. David smiled from the doorway, and Marcus realized that kindness hadn't died in this world after all. It had just been waiting for the right moment to show itself. That evening, Marcus picked Emma up from his mother's house and told her that everything was going to be okay. She threw her arms around his neck and told him she'd known all along because her daddy was the bravest person in the whole world. And as Marcus held his daughter close, feeling her heartbeat against his chest, he finally believed that maybe, just maybe, they were going to make it after all.